Welcome in to the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm Tim Dennis, in for Dave Schrader. And you may be saying he's alive. Yes, I'm alive. I'm kicking. I'm well as well can be. And I want to thank you, the listeners, for your prayers, for your thoughts, for your energy. I am very grateful for everything that you've done. And I want to thank the doctors over at the University of Minnesota as well for everything they've done, the doctors and nurses over there as well. It's been a heck of a journey the last 3 weeks or so. Not going to get into a lot of it, but I do want to thank everybody who also sent messages. I know a lot of people were kind of scared to send messages. I just want to kind of preface this by saying that there is kind of a reason why I said I didn't want to be inundated by messages. It's not that I think I'm some sort of untouchable star or anything like that. Let me explain a little something about what was going on with me real quick. Unlike others who can get through COVID and have an easy time with COVID, I'm not one of those people. I got COVID back in late January, early February of 2020. And when it hit me, it felt like I was going to die. And I actually did shows through that period. It wasn't easy for me to do. Fast forward to now, it hit me hard again, not as hard as it did the first time, thank God, because I was vaccinated. But it was a fight. I was having a hard time even getting my head off the pillow for, even a couple of hours. And it was one of those things where I needed to hold on until I could get some sort of help with what was going on. So that's where I was at. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to respond to each and every person who wanted to reach out and find out how I was doing. And I felt like if I couldn't give you my all and I couldn't respond to you, I didn't want to be the one who happened to piss you off if I couldn't respond to you. And I didn't want to be that person. So if I couldn't give you my all, I didn't want there to be bad blood. I know how that is. I know how that is, where you care and you want to reach out and you want to see how someone's doing and they don't get back to you and you just think the worst or assume the worst. And I'm not that type of person. I'd rather be able to respond to you if you reach out to me. So that's why I said, I prefer you don't message, because I'm going to be out of it. I know I'm going to be out of it. And to be honest with you, I'll tell you where I am right now with this whole COVID thing. I do have some long COVID symptoms right now. The first time I had COVID, I had myocarditis, which is the inflammation around the heart. I still have that. That's still going on right now. I have that kind of, as you can hear in my voice, I have that, it feels like I have phlegm between my lungs and my throat, but I don't. There's nothing in there. So I've got that going on. And I also have the fatigue. I also feel like I want to fall over and sleep every couple of hours. But that's stuff that's going to go on for a couple of months and then it'll go away. I know that too. So, but that's part of what goes on with my journey with COVID. My journey with COVID is not other people's journey with COVID. So, but with that, I know that, how should I put this? I know with what I went through, it's a miracle that I made it through. And that's the key to today's show. Miracles. That's what we're going to talk about today. I got a miracle in the form of monoclonal antibodies. A miracle in the form of a medication that could save me. Because I'll be honest with you, before I got those monoclonal antibodies, I was taking a turn for the worse. And it was not pretty. And I did pray every single day along with you guys. I prayed multiple times a day for an answer, for I don't want to say a cure, but for medication to help me get through, for an answer. That's the best way to put it. And I got that answer. I got that medication that I needed to get me through, because I know my body wasn't able to get me through. And that's what I prayed for. And that's what I got. I got my miracle on the other side of that through modern technology. A little programming note for you. Supernatural News is up tomorrow. We will have our interview today with Joan Louise Hill and Katie Mahon today. So today we're going to talk about miracles, and we're going to talk about the miracle collectors themselves. My guests today are Joan Louise Hill and Katie. I'm going to mess up her last name. I know it. Mahon. You tell me, Katie. Which one is it?
It's Katie Mahon.
Mahon. Okay, Katie Mahon. Joan Louise Hill herself, and let's just read off a little bit about both of them. Her expertise was put to the test to save the life of her son, believe it or not. She has a master's degree from the University of Connecticut and a Bachelor of Science degree from Boston College. Having lived in a number of states and with 3 adult children and families spread across the country, Joan and her husband, Gene, are avid travelers. Joan has been compared to Thing 1 and Thing 2 of Dr. Seuss fame for her numerous volunteer activities in healthcare and education and the places she would go and the people she would see. Katie has became a miracle expert the hard way at 19. She walked away from serial killer Ted Bundy with the help of a stranger who appeared seemingly out of nowhere. She graduated from Santa Clara University and began collecting various hats to wear long before collecting stories. She's a banker, wife, mom of 2 daughters, and passionate volunteer for any cause that has to do with women and children. Her writer hat includes supporting writers through Poets and Writers, where she serves on the board of directors. Katie is a transplant to New York City from the San Francisco Bay Area, where she lives with her husband and has donned her most favorite hat of all, grandmother to 4 little boys. I want to welcome both you ladies to Darkness Radio. Thank you both for being with me today. Miracles are kind of on tap for me this last few weeks, so I'm glad that you both joined me today. Your presence is very timely, and I appreciate that both.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, thank you for having us, Tim. We're delighted to be here, especially at Christmas time.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that too, and about holiday miracles, and talk a little about miracle stories at the holidays as well. It's kind of a magical time of year, and I want to ask you both, and I'll start. I guess I'll start with you, Joan. What is it about the holiday season that feels special or feels like it's a setup for something special to happen?
Well, great question. I think that, if you go back to the word miracle itself, right, it comes from the Latin word mirari, and mirari means wonder. And so at Christmas time, the holiday season, we really see the wonder in the little children. And we see, we have a sense of wonder ourselves about the season, about what it means for so many. The problem, Tim, sort of is that we really have to be vigilant during this season, that we don't get overwhelmed by all the work that we have to do, all the the buying and the packaging and the mailing and the serving and the this and that we really make put Christmas in our hearts. And we take time to, it's an especially important time to take time to notice, what's around us and notice the miracles that occur every day in our lives.
And that is tough. I want to preface it by saying, life has a way of kind of beating you up and making you a cynic. Not a skeptic, but a cynic. I guess when I throw that question out to you, Joan, and I'll throw this one out to you, Katie. When life kind of beats you up, the first thing I hear from people talking about miracles at the holidays and even about Christmas is the cynics will say, or even the atheists will say, well, if you want to talk about, Christmas, well, Jesus wasn't even born in December. If you want to talk about, the holidays and blah, 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 blah. It kind of seems like people want to, and pardon my language here, they want to piss on the parade real quick, if they can, before they look for the miracle. So I would ask you, Katie, how do you turn that thinking around? How do you begin to look for a miracle when it's easier to look for the bad?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why the Miracle Collectors has resonated with so many people, because our book is really more taking the high road, if you will, in terms of falling under the umbrella of hope and, faith, hope, inspiration. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be too Pollyannish about it, because the fact of the matter is, we live in a world that has been particularly difficult for a lot of people in the last couple of years. And I think one thing that sharing stories, especially miracle stories, does is it brings us together. It underscores the fact that we have so much more in common than we are different from each other. Even those tough people that, want to say this is, bunk, it's no different than any other time of year. I sort of think one of the things about Christmas time is that people really do focus on giving and showing up for other people. And there is this, just culture of human kindness that the majority of people are able to focus on at this time of year. And I think what's important about it is that it doesn't just have to be at this time of year. It's a great exercise, of course, for the rest of the year as well.
Well, how do you maintain the rest of the year? I mean, let's face it. There are reminders throughout the calendar. There are reminders throughout the year. We get, there are certain holidays. We get Easter throughout the year. You get Valentine's Day. You get little things that remind you to love. You get little things that remind you that, there's humanity and goodness in humanity. But there's not a constant reminder out there to, that a miracle can happen or things can happen in your day, that there is lightness and good in people, and there's lightness and good in the world. It's easy for me to turn on the 6 o'clock news and be hit with the fire hose of how, the how should I put this? The bad undercurrent of life can hit me. It's hard to be focused and be reminded of just how great life can be at times, of how out of nowhere, it seems like I can be drowning, yet a magical hand can come out and give me the aid I need. And that really happens more than we are told.
Well, if I may continue here, Joan, and then I know you'll want to jump in. We spend a third of the book talking about becoming more aware. And part of that is exactly what you're just talking about, Tim. Mm-hmm. It really is. Awareness really does require intention and practice. It's harder than it seems. People walk around and say, well, I'm aware. Yeah, you're aware of, as you put it, the fire hose on the news at 6 o'clock. But we can shift our attention. We can shift our focus in such a way that these gifts, these miracle moments that most of us really do allow to pass us by, it could be something as simple as a spectacular sunset. It could be, someone having a gesture of kindness to you just when you need it. It could be at this time of year, a darkened, candlelit church playing a beautiful Christmas tune. These things are available to all of us. And it is a question of shifting our focus and our perception. And I think it's one of the reasons why we call the Miracle Collectors the book. It's a book of possibilities, because it asks the reader to look at life through this fresh lens in the company of these extraordinary stories from ordinary people.
Joan, let me ask you, with what Katie just said, what is the difference then between a miracle and a message? Because if like the example that Katie just gave, like a beautiful tune coming from a dark candlelit church, doesn't that seem more of a message than a miracle? Or what? How do you qualify a miracle from a message?
Great. Good question. Before I get to that, I want to just say one other thing about, I really believe that we are hardwired for joy.
Okay.
And even in times of, great distress, we look for the good. And I think that's one of the reasons why, people banged pans in honor of the healthcare workers to say thank you. I think that's why so many people tuned into YouTube videos to share that, that joy. I think that's why the major networks, a lot of them have a piece about good news. Anderson Cooper, for example, there are pieces out there. We know the news is difficult in so many ways, and yet we are all called to celebrate, the good. And to find the joy where we can find it. And as Katie said, so much of that joy is in simple things. Now, to get back to your question.
Sure.
What we really discovered in this 20-year quest that we've been on, this miracle journey, is that miracles are really on a continuum. When we think about miracles, a lot of times we were steeped in the biblical miracles of thunderbolts, right? Mm-hmm. We had the parting of the Red Sea. We had the resurrection of Jesus. In Islam, we have Muhammad's safe flight and escape from Mecca to Medina, these thunderbolts that changed the course of the world. But in fact, Tim, miracles are on a continuum. There's lots of different varieties. All miracles, as I like to say, come in all shapes and sizes, right to the waves of grace that occur when we hear a radio tune that we just need to hear at that moment. Sometimes coincidences conspire to save someone's life. Sometimes, these small things, miracles don't all have to be thunderbolts. They can be messages. And sometimes the messages get put together in a way that we finally get sort of, as I like to say, hit upside the head. Oh, you're talking to me. And it's a way, I believe, for us to, find this connection, this intersection, this Venn diagram of intersection with the divine.
Okay, and I get that, but here's kind of where I'm going with that question, and follow me if you will. I'm driving along. I'm in my car, and I'm thinking about my stepdad who's passed away. He and I are close. And he and I used to share a lot of advice back and forth. And let's say I'm thinking about, let's say a situation that's going on with, finances or something like that. And I'm really stuck, and I don't know how to get out of that situation. And all of a sudden I hear a song about money on the radio. Now, how do I discern that that's not a message from Pop about money as opposed to a miracle?
Well, can I take that one, Joan? Is that okay?
Sure.
Well, so Tim, Albert Einstein had this saying that a lot of people have heard, maybe you've heard it, that there's only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle, and the other is as though everything is a miracle. And I think what Joan is talking about and where we ended up is that if you see a divine hand in everything, in every way, in Ignatian or Jesuit philosophy, they call it finding God in all things. So there is this sort of philosophy out there that miracles or signs or messages all are under the same umbrella. And that also another point is that miracles are also in the eye of the beholder. So one of the questions is, what did you think if that happened? Sort of it's this idea that if you saw it as a sign or a message, then it likely is a sign or a message. And the final point that I would make is that I know for me personally, having walked away from a serial killer, one of the questions that haunted me and has haunted me my entire life is why? Why did I walk away when so many other women were brutally murdered by this man? And I ultimately understood the answer to be under this understanding that if miracles are available to all of us, then in that sense, I wasn't really singled out. If we all have the ability to recognize miracles in our lives, then we're all sort of embraced by the divine.
And I get what you're saying there. I think if you ask 10 people, why did you get away from Ted Bundy? I think at least 8 to 9 out of those 10 people would say, well, obviously you got away in a divine sense because you had a bigger purpose. You were meant to do something bigger, better for mankind. Wouldn't that be the blanket answer?
It's what a lot of people, I think, arrive at. I struggle with that answer. I don't know how you wear the label that you were somehow, meant to, yes, I believe that we all have a purpose in life, but it's complicated to put that next to a beautiful 20-year-old whose life's purpose was cut short and whose family was devastated and was never the same. It's very hard to do that side by side. Being that person, I struggle with that. On the other hand, I hear you, and I think there's truth in it.
See, here's what I struggle with. I struggle with the other side of that, and that is that. And if we can go a little deeper into this topic, let's do it, because this is what I have a problem with, is that the people who say, well, that 20-year-old who did get slain by a serial killer, the reason why is because they made a soul contract on the other side before they were even born, that they were going to do that. That's how they were going to end their life in that life. I don't get that. To me, that doesn't register, or that they did that because it helps with soul growth, or to me, those things don't register. I don't get that. That to me, I can't imagine being a soul on the other side and saying, okay, I'm only going to live to be 20 and I'm going to be taken out by a serial killer, but I'm going to live this rich, full life until the age of 20, and I'm going to drop all these lessons on the people around me, and I'm going to be an advanced soul up until then. But then I'm only going to live to that point and then give myself up brutally to what? To teach who?
No.
Right?
I don't. I think that there may be those that think that, and I think that, however, I think the likelihood is, and if we look at so many people are taken from us early for so many reasons. I think that what's important, and you see them live on, sometimes we see them live on, and really I just was reading the thing about, a young man was in a car accident, terrible car accident. And, we can talk about murders, but we can also talk about all the accidents that happen. But his heart was put into another person. And this person who got the heart, I don't know if you guys saw this, it was very endearing. Person who got the heart recorded his heartbeat, put it in a teddy bear, and sent it to the dad, the parent of this young boy. There's a way in which I think that there are lessons that those who go early teach us. And, we've seen that, and we've, in any one of the numbers of foundations that are out there, from the foundations for the kids who were slain at Sandy Hook, to the kids, to people who die early, to slain soldiers. There is the point is we're trying to make a point of their life and how they lived. The Travis Roy Foundation, who, his 11 seconds on the ice before he became paralyzed, as a Division I hockey player.
Yeah.
And he made something of that and just passed away. But that foundation, those things, those points of those people's lives live on. And I think that's a message that those who are left behind try to put forward. I don't personally believe that there's this contract before that people sign up for. I do, however, think it's a way for people to, make their peace with what's happened. And the other part of it, quite frankly, Tim and Katie and I have talked about this, is, it's we don't know what's on the other side of the tapestry. Mm-hmm. We're just looking at the wrong side here. So maybe that's a blessing. I have no idea. We have no idea. And it's, we see through the vision darkly. Is that what they quote? Katie probably remembers the exact quote, but we don't have all the answers. We might like to, think we do, but we do not.
Well, and just to piggyback on that, and I was gonna make that same point, Joan. Typically we can read each other's minds. In the first book that we wrote, I really was forced to go down that road, Tim. This road of, okay, do we have a purpose? Is there, why would, what's the answer to the why? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I came across that has to do with what Joan just said about, does heaven exist? I mean, you read about these near-death experiences and how viscerally real they are. I personally believe that they are real. Mm-hmm. Euripides, a couple thousand years ago, I think, at least, made the comment, what if death be that which men call life, and life what men call death? In other words, what if these women, in my case, that were murdered by Ted Bundy, what if they are in eternal bliss and happiness on the other side of that tapestry? So, as Joan said, that's something that we don't know. And while I was contemplating this, and all the years I've contemplated this, I was at a funeral for a friend of mine that we served on a board together, and his son, who was a wonderful, wonderful kid, went to Georgetown and, rowed on the star rowing team and had just, met the love of his life. He was going to go off to the London School of Economics. And he took a vacation right before that, and he was killed by an errant truck driver who went into the lane. So we're at the funeral, and the priest said, I don't want anybody to walk out of here and say that this was somehow God's will. He said, it is important that we all understand that there's no answer to the question why, and that having faith is living with this unanswerable question.
To me, that's perfect. That's the other thing that really bothers me is when you see something tragic like that somebody says it's God's will. I've never been able to wrap my head around that. I don't think that accidents like that are God's will. I just think it's a human thing that happened.
Yeah, it's part of the human condition, and we think that we need to have answers as to why, this big question why. And I'm with you. I really appreciated what this priest said. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's right down my belief alley. I think that was perfectly put. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I tell you what, let's at this point, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit. We'll lighten it up a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about holiday miracles, and we'll get some examples of some miracle stories. And I'd like to talk a little bit more positive about some positive miracles as well, as we've got some positive stuff to talk about, not necessarily going down the dark road. I didn't mean to go that dark, ladies. Let's quite all right. When we come back, we'll lighten it up a little bit, and we'll talk about the miracle collectors. Our guests are Joan Louise Hill and Katie Mahon, and we'll be right back with the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm Tim Dennis, in for Dave Schrader, who is heading off to Las Vegas for the Las Vegas Para-Unity Convention. If you have a chance, be sure to grab a ticket for this weekend and check out the folks from the Holzer Files. It'll be himself and Shane and all the rest of the gang. They'll be out there this weekend in Las Vegas. We're talking about the miracle collectors. Joan Louise Hill and Katie Mahon are my guests for this show today, and we are talking miracles today. And want to lighten it up a little bit and talk about really, what is the simplicity of miracles? I think we tend to overlook, and I said I wasn't going to get dark on this, ladies, but I do want to talk a little bit about overlooking a miracle for a second. I think sometimes we tend to double clutch or overlook when something really good happens in our life, because I think we tend to look that gift horse in the mouth, you know? And we tend to, I think, because we're looking for I'm hitting all the cliches here. I think we're looking for the other shoe to drop. You know, we're questioning where things come from, because we are used to, you know, kind of, if something good happens, well, then it has to be counterbalanced with something, almost like a karma equation, for lack of a better term. Why is this? And I'll throw it to Joan first. Why is it we're always looking for a balance of negative with positive? Why can't we just accept that we are getting a gift from God, or we are getting a gift from the universe?
Well, I think that, it goes back to talk about cliches, you know, whether you're a half full or half empty person kind of thing. There is that, right? That saying wouldn't exist without it. But I think that, you know, when we started our miracle journey, literally 20 years ago, one of our first points was, you know, we were not poster children for religion or spirituality. We were living our lives, doing our jobs, raising our kids, you know, paying our taxes, doing what people do. And it was hard to imagine that we had been selected out from, you know, the millions and zillions of people in the world to have had a divine presence, like tap us on the shoulder and, you know, save our lives or save the life of a loved one or make a difference. And so that's really where we began our quest, was setting up, how could this happen to us? So we set out and looked at, you know, miracles in other cultures and science and philosophy. And miracles have been discussed and debated for centuries. But what we found out, and I think this is really an important point, and really is the crux of the second book, is that miracles are actually available to everyone. And it's looking, and it's, as you started your question with, you know, why do people overlook good things? And it's because, you know, we talk about noticing, but it's also about being deserving. And it's about, you know, not letting our light shine and feeling that, you know, our life can be touched by the divine. We tell a story in the book about a woman who, in her book club, disclosed that she told a story where she had been in London going to New York, and she decided she needed a cup of coffee in a new book, and went to the desk in the days before 9/11 and said, "Hey, is there another plane I could take a little later to New York?" And they said, "Sure." And there's 1.5 hours. And so she signed up for that plane and didn't get on the plane she was scheduled to be on. And the plane she was supposed to be on was Pan American Flight 103 that blew up over Lockerbie, Scotland. Ooh. When she told that story to her book group, there was the collective, oh my gosh, and you know, she all of a sudden went, do you think that was something? My life means something. My life is important enough that I would be saved. And people were like, yes, of course. And so I think it's maybe not our natural predilection, but I think it's an important piece, and it's an important thing that we try to remind people through the Miracle Collectors, that each life is important, and each life has the potential to experience miracles. And you don't have to be, you know, a poster child for religion or spirituality. You need to be aware. And then the second part of that is, how do we become a miracle for someone else? But we'll get to that.
Yeah, we will. And that's actually what I was going to ask a little bit down the line here. Why? Here's what I'm very curious about. Why is it that people get upset when the divine doesn't deliver the way they want them to? In other words, if I pray for a miracle, or if I pray for it a certain way, and the divine delivers in a way that I don't exactly want, why is there disappointment?
I'll take that one. Although I wish I had a better answer, Tim. It's about why our prayers, and how is it that prayers aren't answered in the way that we hope. one of the questions that we asked in the first book is, what if the miracle you get isn't the one that you asked for? Mm-hmm. And so, again, that's a shift in focus to sort of see what it is, the hands that you get dealt ultimately. I think praying to God is opening up a dialogue, opening up a conversation. I think all of us understand completely that God doesn't have a magic wand that can, and we, by virtue of our prayers, aren't in charge of that magic wand. So, faith is, I suppose, the gap there, accepting, whatever it is that life is throwing at you. And we've all had, I'm sure, difficult, scary times, as have our loved ones. I don't think there's any good answer to why prayers aren't answered. And you have to finish the sentence in the way that we want them to be. It just isn't the way that it works. And we have to come to some understanding about that.
Is it maybe that there's too much of a self-serving need in those prayers for miracles? Do we get too greedy with what we want?
I don't believe.
Oh, go ahead, Joan.
I don't believe that that's even possible, to be honest, that we could be too greedy. I don't think the way of the divine is the way of the human, if you will. I think that being greedy is one of those human qualities which, hopefully most of us try to temper and avoid. So I don't think so. I think that sometimes we don't see the whole picture. And I think that oftentimes, someone, and you see it with, people who are healed sometimes, or people that, aren't healed. I'm not sure that we always know what the best answer to the question is. And so many people that we see who have had these terrible accidents or injuries occur to them, they'll tell you their life is far better. It's hard for us to understand. So the point being, it's hard for me to understand how that could be, but they're having their experience and they're telling us that their life is better because of whatever that disability is or whatever that incident is that happened. And so sometimes I think that, we can become too full of ourselves to think that we're the only ones who know what we need. I'm not sure that that's always true.
I tell you, I know you ladies don't know this. Our listening audience knows this. I have a condition called Charcot foot, which my leg bone went through my ankle and through my foot. And if it would have broken through the skin, I would have lost my leg below my knee. And for the last almost 8 years now, I've been struggling to hold on to my leg and my foot. And it's kind of like a ticking time bomb. Your leg can slip. Your leg bone can slip and can eventually go through your foot because the bones aren't necessarily stable there anymore. And you do get ulcerated wounds on the bottom of your foot, depending. And I walk around in a big plastic and foam boot called a crow walker boot, and that thing has caused me wounds. A lot of times I've spent a lot of the last 4 years on a knee caddy or on a scooter because of wounds from my boot, because it's ill-fitting. And so when you talk about people with disabilities and why they're grateful for certain things, when I'm actually up and walking and moving on 2 feet, I get that. You're grateful because you're walking. I'm grateful because I still have my foot. I think people really take walking and running and whatnot for granted. I'm grateful that I'm still up and around on 2 feet. So yeah, I get it. I get it. I completely get it. When I get up in the morning and I realize that I'm not putting on a prosthetic, that I'm extremely grateful. And I work very hard to, keep my foot. So yeah, I believe that in itself is a miracle. The fact that I've been able to, a lot of Charcot patients lose their foot within 5 to 10 years of getting Charcot foot. The fact that I'm 8 years in and I haven't lost my foot, I think I'm doing pretty well. So I consider that a miracle as well.
Well, as is the gratitude that you feel. That's amazing, Tim, that you have, that you have focused on the piece of that story that you can be grateful about. And that is, more about what if the miracle you get isn't the one that you would have wanted. It's like our third friend who, wrote the first book with us, whose daughter was shaken so hard by a babysitter that she lost her sight. And yet her daughter, ended up not, being the quote unquote vegetable, the word that they used at the time, went on to graduate from Stanford with honors and get her PhD in philosophy and et cetera. And I think that our friend Meb has always seen that as, she's always considered her daughter Liz to be her miracle. But it's a tough story, and that gets back to, a question you asked earlier about, why are we always, waiting for the other shoe to drop or whatever, even wonderful miracle stories. A lot of times there is a piece involved that has to do with escape, or trauma, or, something that wasn't good. And then, this amazing thing happened.
And I understand that almost when you've had a series of bad things happen to you, having an almost I don't want to use this term lightly because I don't want people who actually have it to think I'm making light of it, but you almost have a form of PTSD when it comes to expecting more bad things to happen. It's almost like a cycle. It's a cycle of, well, this bad thing happened, so another bad thing is going to happen, and you keep expecting bad things to happen, and it's hard to pull up out of that cycle.
I completely understand that.
Yeah. But at some point you do have to realize that you're in that cycle and that you do need to pull out of it. Because nothing's going to change if you don't start looking for something positive.
Well, I think that's right, and I think that there's a couple of things. That I know certainly keep me going. One is that, I often say, as a cancer survivor and as a strange, person with an odd chronic illness myself, that, everybody gets something. Everyone has something. Mm-hmm. No one escapes, no one gets out of life alive.
Right.
So the question is, how do we deal with that? And I feel so blessed to have had things that, can be dealt with. And I also, when people talk to me, because often I'll talk to people who are newly diagnosed with XYZ, and I'll say, you just hold on, and I would say this to you as well. And I just got to go a couple more years later. The pace of, medical information advancement is skyrocketing right now, and they expect the trajectory to just be remarkable. And I gave a commencement address at my high school in May this year, and I asked the kids if they had seen a miracle. And I had them all raise their hands because I said, you don't understand. The last major epidemic we had in the United States was polio. It took 60 years to get a vaccine. We had the work being done in advance that we were able to get these vaccines for COVID out within a year. That's pretty remarkable. I think that we all have to understand it's a way that we, do also connect with each other, find that commonality to each other. None of us are perfect.
Right.
And we all have something that we have to, that's why we have to be kind to each other, because we don't know what burden that person, is carrying that we interact with.
Right.
And it may be a burden we very well cannot see.
Right.
there's one other thing too that I just want to bring up here in case we don't have another opportunity. And one of the things we really discovered, in this underneath this heading, this first part of the book, is this section of becoming aware. Part of becoming aware is actually recognizing that all we have is right now, this moment, right now, and trying to figure out a way to live in this moment when we're feeling good, and because we're not guaranteed anything else. We're not guaranteed the next 60 seconds. If the more and the longer that we can live in this exact moment, the easier it is to appreciate and feel, completely alive.
I think that up until COVID, that was not challenged. I mean, we had this, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. I think we felt a sense of permanency in our lives because we were so protected. We were protected by technology. We were protected by medical advancement. We were protected by just the ease of our lives. That, to say, oh, you can't be promised tomorrow. Well, tell me why not? I can go to the grocery store. I don't have to hunt my food. I'm in no danger there. I get back and forth in a car. I don't have, I'm not in danger of breaking anything from running from place to place. So to tell people that you're not in, I'm not in any imminent danger from day to day. I think there was an idea of, I've got this bubble around me. I can make plans from, for 2 years from now because I don't think that anything's going to happen to me. But now within the last couple of years, people are realizing that, hey, I really can't make long-term plans. Life is definitely, there's this sense of a lack of permanence, with pandemics and escalating conflicts and things like that. I think I think now people are getting the idea that, life is less permanent than what we thought.
I think that particularly happened after, in the aftermath of 9/11. People felt that, oh my God, we felt very invincible here and very safe. Mm-hmm. And after that, those incidents, it was a huge wake up call. And I joked and actually wrote about it in the first book about, people feeling that, when it's almost like being a cancer patient. When will, the next shoe drop or will the other shoe drop? But I think it's also a wake up call to appreciate every moment. And that's what I think Katie was talking about. And it's also a wake up call in terms of, you talking about miracle stories. So many amazing and wonderful things happened around that time of 9/11, with rescues and people, just going outside of themselves and the generosity of spirit that bound us all together. Sometimes, good things can come out of horrific experiences. I saw an interesting interview, and I want to get your opinion on this as well. It's interesting that the three of us are talking here today. There's a gentleman by the name of Rutger Bregman who has a book out now, and I'm not going to promote his book. We're promoting your book here today. But he has a book out there, and he ultimately believes that people are good, that there is no such thing as a bad person. And he cites many different examples. He'll cite the example of the prison system in Norway and the fact that they don't treat their prisoners with any malice whatsoever. That they even have they do everything from the prison guards sit with the prisoners and watch movies, to the fact that they have their own record company in the prisons in Norway. And they treat them with respect. And with that, they have a low return rate to prison in Norway because they reform their prisoners.
he even has in his book an example of a real life Lord of the Flies situation with children, that when these children were put together, they didn't tear each other apart. They actually worked together as a society. Mm-hmm. With that in mind, I would ask you, is a miracle at times, or more times than not, man-made? And this is getting back to what we were talking about earlier. Is it more man-made than divine, or is it more divine than man-made?
Well, I would say, Tim, that, we're spiritual beings. Mm-hmm. So I would have to answer your question as saying that it's more divine than man-made, and that, in fact, we have the opportunity to be the conduit for the divine here on earth. And, we can talk about it in a minute, or we can talk about it now.
Let's talk about it now. Yeah, let's tackle it now. Yeah.
Yeah. So this idea of being the miracle for someone else. And one of the things, when we think about miracles, and we talked about this earlier, this idea of praying for what we need, for what we want, which is, all well and good. And I certainly encourage it and do it myself. But this idea of being the miracle, when we think about that, we're asking God or the divine or the universe, whatever, to say yes to us. Mm-hmm. Heal my friend, grant me peace, bring on the rain, that sort of thing.
Right.
But this concept of be the miracle is turning miracles upside down and saying, well, what about us saying yes to God? What about us, recognizing that we're the right person in the right place at the right time to make a difference in somebody's life? And if I may, I'll give you a quick story.
Sure.
That occurred last holiday season on New Year's Eve with a waitress in Orlando, Florida, who was just going about her night job. And she came across a family who ordered dinner and neglected to order anything for their scrawny-looking son, which they gave an excuse for, but she found odd. And upon closer inspection, she noticed that he had scratches and bruises on his face and arms, and she was alarmed. So she went back into the kitchen, found a big white piece of paper, and on that piece of paper she wrote, "Do you need help?" She went back out to this table where, fortunately, she was able to stand behind the parents, facing the boy, and hold up this sign. And the boy barely perceptibly shook his head yes. She called 911, and the stepfather was arrested for child abuse. Now, this is a sad story, but it's also a wonderful example of how we can, make the choice to show up for each other. Yes, there is sometimes a risk to getting involved. Now, so, it turns out that she was working that night simply because a friend of hers or a colleague, other staff person had called in sick, and that this little boy happened to sit in the only seat where he could see the sign, but the parents could not. It turns out from further reports that it's very likely that she saved this little boy's life. So this concept of being the miracle, is recognizing when we are the right person to make a difference right then, as this waitress did. And Joan and I joke, we really like, all of us like to be in control of our lives, even though if we think about that concept, we're not. And so, if you like to be in control like we do, go ahead and be somebody else's miracle, because it sure beats waiting around for that thunderbolt from the sky that you hope is coming.
True. Very true. The other, when you bring up that story, you also bring up a conundrum for a lot of people, and that is, do I have the courage to be that miracle? How many people would in that situation decide to have the courage to step up and be that miracle? That's, I guess that's the other part of it too. I mean, depending on the situation, it's one thing to pass a homeless person on the street and give them $20 or take them to a cafe and order them dinner. It's another to see somebody who's being abused and decide to step up and do something.
Well, it's it's funny you talk about that courage, because one of the, we talk about in the book that there are these sort of 5 sort of takeaways that we've been going around speaking about. And one of them really is related to miracle courage. It's that ability to, you might be rebuffed by somebody. They may say, no, I don't need your help, or no, whatever, or you might get in trouble. You may think you're going to get in trouble. Like the waitress could have thought her boss was, or going to say something to her, because perhaps he would perceive she was bothering these clients, the people in the restaurant. But this notion of miracle courage gives us the ability to perhaps, be a little braver than we might be. We joke that it's sort of like a muscle and it needs to be exercised. And it's an important thing. If if you see something, say something, and, be willing to be wrong, if you will. And that's okay, because if you had the right reason of trying to help, or trying to, if your intentions were within that generosity of spirit, which is one of our other, insights over all these years, it's okay. And it's about doing things, in a full way, to really try to showing up and kind of being all in. And as this waitress was, she was doing her job. She was all in. She wasn't just delivering the food. She was taking care of the people she was serving. And I think we're all asked to do that in our part of our lives.
Understandable. And by all means, we should be stepping up and doing that more. I mean, that's, I guess the point of what I was trying to get to. I was also playing devil's advocate with you too. I think a lot more people than not are kind of biting their cheeks and thinking I should do something, but I've got my family, I've got this, I've got that, and they don't take that step to make that move.
Can I share another story?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So there was a really wonderful, again, like a lot of these stories, there's a difficult aspect to the stories. But last spring, a friend of mine, very good friend of mine, called to tell me about an experience that her husband had in speaking to a commander. He supplies radios and that sort of thing to the Boulder Police Department, and he knows a lot of those guys, gals and guys, I guess. Mm-hmm. And when the massacre occurred at the King Super in Boulder, Colorado, if you remember that situation, mm-hmm. There was a memorial the next day or a couple of days later after this massacre occurred. And this friend of my friend was there, this commander in the Boulder Police Department. And a young man walked up to him with an American flag and said, I just needed to give this to someone in the Boulder Police Department because an officer had been killed. His name was Eric Talley. And he said, I came across, or I should say, Eric Talley came across me and some of my friends many years ago. We were underage, we were 15 and 16-year-old punks. We were doing drugs and drinking alcohol. And instead of arresting us, Eric Talley sat down and gave us this fatherly lecture on how important it was to find the right path and do the right thing. And he said, and you know what? That moment, that day, I decided to find the right path and do the right thing. He changed my life. And I never told him. And so I just want to honor him and honor his memory by bringing you this flag and telling you that story.
Wow. That's really cool.
But there are those wonderful stories out there of people who have stepped up and, been the miracle. We like to say, this sort of wave of this ripple effect, this wave of a miracle. You never really know, what shore it's going to touch, what form mm-hmm. it's going to take, and how it's going to move forward. We have a gentleman here who takes photographs at the homeless shelters. is a professional photographer. And at the end of the session or the next time he goes in, he'll bring the gentleman a photograph that he's taken of them. And he is a fabulous photographer. He takes these remarkable, really captures the essence of these people. And his rate of having the people who have been photographed by him find jobs, find housing, no longer be homeless or jobless, is 3 times the national average. And when he talked to some of the other men about why that could be, they told him that, instead of looking in the mirror every morning, they would sleep with this picture that he had given them of themselves under their pillow, and they would look at that, and they would have a sense of themselves. I deserve to have a home. I deserve to have a job. I'm worthy. And they would get their self-esteem and their worthiness back in a way that could, change their lives. And I think that, he started it out just as a simple project to take, fill time and take pictures, but never knowing or imagining that, he would see into these souls and have such a profound result on these people's lives, which is why we sort of say we need to go out and, sort of be all in and give our own gifts to the world, because we just don't know, whose life we will take and where we will be the miracle for another.
Very true. Very true indeed. Before we wrap up today, I wanted to get 1 or 2 holiday miracle stories out of both you ladies. By the way, the book is The Miracle Collectors, Uncovering Stories of Wonder, Joy, and Mystery. It is available at themiraclecollectors.com. You can order the book right off the website, and we do have a link to that on the description of the show today. It's holiday season. We're right in the middle of the holiday season. And, of course, people are looking for some feel-good stories, and I wanted to deliver 1 or 2 here today. And we've been delivering them, of course, here throughout the show. Joan, do you have a favorite holiday story, holiday miracle story that you wanted to deliver to our audience today?
Well, I think I'm going to let Katie tell my favorite one, but I will tell you one that is not necessarily a Christmas story.
Okay.
But I will tell you, we had an interview with an announcer, radio host, and she told us a story. It's a New Year's Eve story, so that's kind of close enough, I think.
Sure.
And she was a teenager at the time, and, as most of us sort of advanced teenagers can remember, nothing was better than going out on New Year's Eve. It was just a fun, you kind of wanted to be, it was the precursor of being an adult perhaps, and getting dressed up and going out. And she was no exception. She was so, taken with the plan for the evening and what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. And she was the kind of person who always wanted to be ready first and, out the door, didn't want to miss a moment of any fun to be had. But this particular New Year's Eve, she was dragging her feet. And she didn't get ready, and she didn't get all, gussied up in this timely fashion. And her mother commented on that, what's wrong? And she said, I'll get ready, but not yet. And they were waiting for her dad to get home from work because he had to work that day. And instead of her dad coming home that day or that night at the appointed hour, someone knocked on the door and said, your dad's been in a terrible accident. He's at the hospital. He's not expected to live. You need to leave right now and get there. No being in the shower, no doing your hair, no all the things that she would have been doing had she not had this sense that, there was something else and someplace else she needed to be. And the story has a wonderful ending in that he had been severely injured, but as you started, this podcast with, through the amazing work of the doctors and the nurses, the gentleman survived and went on. And she said it was one of the most powerful and profound experiences of her life because she just knew something was different.
Wow.
So I guess I think I know which story. If that's okay, Tim, I'll jump in with our, Joan and I love this story because it's, Joan, I think, mentioned it before, this idea of generosity of spirit. Okay. And the idea that generosity of spirit is contagious. We've all been living under the thumb of a contagious disease. And so it's nice when you can talk about something like generosity of spirit, that's contagious. And of course, the classic example is George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, he is the epitome of human kindness. But last Christmas time in a town in Brainerd, Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you know this story, Tim.
I don't know if I know the story, but I know the town.
Yeah, so I guess the pandemic had hit especially hard there with people out of work. And a man at a drive-through window at the Dairy Queen gets to the window to pay, and he says, I'd like to pay for the car behind me, like to pay for their order. And so the woman that was in the car behind him hears this, and she said, oh, well, I think I'll pay for the car behind me. Well, this went on for 900 cars over 3 days. The whoever was at the window as they closed and was the last customer, they just said, do you want to leave, $10 for tomorrow? And they, everybody said yes. And a quote that I happen to have right in front of me, the Dairy Queen manager said, during times like these, it kind of restores your faith in humanity. We see a lot of anger, tension, and selfish behavior, but what we witnessed was pure kindness, and it was a breath of fresh air. So, it's a nice note to end on, in that miracles really are a breath of fresh air, but we have to find them. We have to be on the lookout.
I did see that on the news, actually, that the lineup of cars was pretty amazing. If you ever see news footage of that, and it's pretty easy to search out on YouTube. The lineup in the drive-thru is pretty amazing, and it was just it really does warm your heart to see people paying for each other, and yeah. The spirit was
such a simple thing. It was such a simple thing that people did, and continued the generosity of spirit.
Yeah, most definitely.
There are other wonderful stories of Christmas time from the, sort of impromptu ceasefire that the troops did in World War I, and crossed into the no man's land between the German soldiers and the English and French soldiers, and shared singing, and were respectful of the people who had been injured. No one, told them to do that. It was part of the human experience in a Christmas miracle.
Very true. Very true. I only have one small miracle story to share with you, and it seems so petty compared to everything you've shared here today.
Oh, goodness.
There are no petty. No.
There's no big or small where miracle stories are concerned.
But it actually involves my own family, and I don't share very much family stuff on the show here. But it happened actually over Thanksgiving, so it's a little bit of a holiday story. And I'll leave names out of it because I don't want family names out there. But I have one sister who's a little estranged from the rest of the family, and she hasn't talked to my other sister or my mom in quite a while. It just so happened that I didn't go over to my family's for Thanksgiving because I had COVID. It's the first holiday I've missed in quite a long time. So I actually turned it into a bit of a joke that COVID actually reunited my family this year. Because the one sister who's estranged actually brought over my nephew for dessert over to the family Thanksgiving, and actually made up with my mom and my sister. And she hadn't talked to them in years.
That's a lovely story.
So there you go. So
that is a beautiful story. It was
a COVID miracle on Thanksgiving.
I think COVID miracles are terrific. There's one story that I love that we did tell in our first book that was a Christmas Eve story, and which I had the people who were participants in this over on New Year's Eve, and it had to do with it's a ski story where we were a young man, a 15-year-old, and his dad were skiing with a guide, and it's snowing and, kind of basically blizzarding, and they had a, walkie-talkies between them. And the young boy stopped And the dad and the ski instructor or ski guide stopped about 20 feet below them, but it was really whiteout conditions, and they kept telling the son to please come down and find them because they didn't want him to be lost. Well, he kind of said, "Wait a second, I think I see something," and he saw something. He goes, "Something purple," and so he kind of went over and he poked at this purple thing, and he said, and he kind of radioed and he said, "Dad, it's a ski," and then he could only see, kind of uncovered the ski and dug some more. He goes, "Dad, it's attached to a boot." And they uncovered some more. "Dad, is a person." Meanwhile, of course, Dad and the guide are hiking back up the mountain. And it turned out there had been a 15-year-old girl skier who had skied through the trees and fallen upside down into a tree well. And there she was in her white ski suit. Fortunately, she had purple skis, which were quickly being covered over by the raging blizzard. She was upside down, unconscious in this tree well. And she had been skiing with her siblings, and they were down at the bottom of the mountain. They had thought she had already come down and gone home. Had he not been there, she would not have been discovered till springtime.
Oh my
and
God.
What was wonderful was at New Year's Eve, the family was going over to meet the other family. And the joke was that wouldn't it be wonderful if these two 15-year-olds hit it off, because then they could tell their children when the children asked, "How did you meet Mom?" that he could say, "Well, I found her under a Christmas tree."
So did they ever hit it off?
I'm waiting. They were 15 a few years ago, so
okay.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
We're going to stay tuned. But it was just a wonderful, holiday story of really being the miracle for someone else, and also all the things that we talk about in the book of paying attention, of noticing, of connection, and of being the miracle for someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're right. That's one of those situations where you absolutely can be there for somebody at that time and be that miracle. And I think that's really what, coming into the holiday season, that's really what it's all about. And to do just that extra something for somebody, whether it be, putting an extra couple of bucks in a red kettle when you're walking into a grocery store, or helping out somebody who may be homeless, or dropping off socks at a homeless shelter, or whatever it is that you choose to do, or donating to Toys for Tots, or whatever it is that you can do something extra in the holiday season, but really starting a miracle with a miracle, you being a miracle. That's what's most important, I think, in the holiday season. And I've always been a believer in, if you want a miracle, you got to generate one. It starts with you. You have to really be the catalyst for, if you want great things in your life, you have to start doing great things. So,
like the guy that paid that first thing at the Dairy Queen.
Right.
I mean, who knew that his one gesture would be multiplied 900 times? I mean, it's incredible. That's
right. Paying it forward. That's a very Minnesotan thing to do.
I have a son who was born in Minnesota, so I completely understand.
Does he talk like that a lot?
No, but I love Minnesota nice. It's a special thing. It really is. We loved living there.
Yeah, it's not too shabby.
No.
That's another Minnesota thing. Not too shabby,
Yeah.
Yeah, not too shabby, Well, ladies, it's been a wonderful visit. The book is The Miracle Collectors, Uncovering Stories of Wonder, Joy, and Mystery. It's available right now at themiraclecollectors.com. You can, I believe you can order it in time for the holidays, can't you?
Yes. Oh, for sure. You can get it from Amazon in 24 hours.
There you go. You can also get it from Amazon. I know you can order it right from the website and get it there, but if you can get it at Amazon as well.
Your local bookshop can also get it. Usually it's an easy next day delivery from their book distributor.
That's right. And you can support your local brick and mortar stores as well,
yes,
and get it there.
Absolutely.
Yep. And that's right, you could do that as well. Joan Louise Hill, Katie Mahon, we appreciate you being with us today. And again, go to the miraclecollectors.com, get it there. Go to Amazon, get it there, or support your local brick and mortar stores. Remember, tomorrow is Supernatural News right here on Darkness Radio. For Dave Schrader, I'm Tim Dennis. Be sure to go out there and do some miraculous work, whether it be supporting your community, supporting friends, supporting family, whatever it is you choose to do. Start the miracle with you this weekend. We'll see you tomorrow.